Emily, I want to discuss about the immigration consequences of being arrested. You know, we already presented the people that if you have a traffic ticket which doesn't involve any bodily injury and if it doesn't involve any arrest and you paid less than $500 as a fine, you don't have to mention the 485 application or N400 application. We clearly said that. But what if there is an arrest involved in either let's say, for example, DUI or maybe a shoplifting theft? What are the consequences? What do they need to do first?
Yeah, number one is whenever you're asked that question, have you ever been arrested, particularly on the I-485 application form, it does ask that. You will need to disclose the arrest, even if nothing ever came of it, even if you paid your fine and everything's over with, you still have to disclose it if you've actually
Emily,
been arrested.
my criminal lawyer told me that this case is expunged, that means completely closed, and that I don't have to disclose this information anywhere. Do I still need to disclose that in the immigration forms?
Yes, that's very important. So if you're going through that expungement process and you're also going through the immigration process, you need to make sure that you keep the documentation, because once it's expunged, the records won't exist anymore, but you do still have to provide documentation and disclose it to USCIS. Expungement everywhere except with USCIS.
Let's go through some of the common things when people get arrested, Emily. One of the common things that we normally see is DUI. When they get arrested in the DUI, what are the consequences for that, what you normally see on the non-immigrant visa and on the immigrant visa? Let's go to the non-immigrant visa. Let's say, for example, I have a H-1B stamping, which is still valid until 2023, and I got the DUI arrest. What are the consequences?
Yeah, most usually you will get a notification from the consulate saying that your valid H-1B visa stamp has been prudentially revoked. That doesn't mean that you are out of status. It doesn't mean you're going to be deported. This is just related to the visa stamp. Now, what does the visa stamp do? That's what gets you into the door of the United States. Once you're here, it's your I-94 that says how long you can stay. So just because your visa has been revoked, it has no impact right now on your status, but the next time you travel, you are going to have to get a new visa stamp, even if the other one has not expired. And as part of that process, if the DUI has happened within the last 5 years of when you're going for visa stamping, you're going to have to go for an extra medical exam to verify that there's no kind of alcoholism involved, and that could make you inadmissible. So that's the most important aspect there. So it doesn't put you out of status, it doesn't make you deportable if it's your run-of-the-mill, if there's a run-of-the-mill DUI, but your visa will likely be revoked and you'll have to go for stamping and go through an extra medical exam. And you do have to disclose that on your 485 as well as your DS-160 when you go for visa stamping.
Emily, I have a DUI arrest. You said that I'm going to get an email from the consulate. Maybe that email didn't come in. Maybe I didn't look into the email. Can I go outside the country and come back with a stamping?
I would not recommend traveling unless you intend to get a new stamp, because it's very possible that when you're coming back at the port of entry or even at the airport in your home country, they may not let you on that flight because they have the record of that revocation, even if you don't know.
Right, and don't rely on the information that your email might have been missed, maybe something might have missed. So if you have a DUI, consider that before you travel, you should not use the current visa that you have. Emily, the other thing that we sometimes look into is the shoplifting, though. What are the non-immigrant consequences for that thing, where the person has been arrested for shoplifting, and what are the consequences?
Right, so that doesn't seem to have, in most situations, your minor misdemeanor shoplifting does not have any impact on the visa or your current status, but it does have to be disclosed on the DS-160 as well as on the 485 application. When we were when we had the biometrics requirement for the I-539, which is typically used for H-4s and L-2s to extend their status, we were getting some requests for evidence from time to time saying, hey, we ran a security check based on the fingerprints you've done, and we see this shoplifting record from 5 years ago. Provide us the documentation to show what the current status is. So you may have to submit documentation to USCIS as part of an extension, but that we typically only saw when the biometrics requirement was there.
Emily, one of the other common thing that what I see is the domestic violence, though, which we know that it's a crime of moral turpitude. It has a lot of negative consequences if the person has been convicted. But there are sometimes, even if they are not convicted, there are some negative consequences, though. What should they do if by any chance they have been arrested for domestic violence issues, though?
Yeah, I think in addition to working with a criminal lawyer, you need to work with an immigration lawyer or work with someone who's familiar with the immigration consequences, because it needs to be determined, what the ultimate charge is, what the ultimate conviction is, if there's any kind of discretion involved there, may change the outcome for how that impacts the immigration process. But the most important thing is you need to contact a qualified lawyer on both immigration and the criminal issue.
My criminal lawyer told that since the case is dismissed, I will not have any consequences. Is that right?
No, because you still have to disclose the arrest, assuming that there was an arrest involved and any jail time was involved. You have to provide all of that documentation, both a 485 as well as the DS-160 process. And when you do disclose that on the 485 application, although they've been waiving some interviews for employment base, they won't waive the interview whenever there's a criminal background for someone.
Especially for the domestic violence, they're going to look into the arrest record very carefully to see what was being stated at the time when the person has been arrested. That is very crucial for the immigration lawyer, though. So when you consult an immigration lawyer, you should have the arrest. The police will give a record statement, written statement to you why you've been arrested. That is very important for you to give it to the immigration lawyer, because what I normally look into is that what did you made a statement? So irrespective of what happens in the court, the USCIS can adjudicate your application differently than what the judge has done in the criminal proceedings, though. The USCIS has a lot more discretion, especially when it comes to the domestic violence. I definitely, if there is any incident that there, I definitely want you to consult a qualified immigration lawyer. Question that comes out, how about the trespassing, though? Misdemeanor trespassing, will that have any impact on it? And the person has been arrested, Emily.
Yeah, generally they look at, is it a misdemeanor, and what is the sentence, the maximum sentence that could be imposed according to the state criminal law in the state where this occurred. So we can't say blanket, it's not going to have an issue. But generally you're looking at, it needs to be a misdemeanor, and it needs to be the maximum sentence is less than 1 year of jail time. That may fall under what we call the petty offense exception that does not make you inadmissible, to where you could potentially still adjust your status and still receive visa stamping after that. But it's very important to go through all of the documents with an immigration attorney as well as your criminal attorney.
Especially whenever there is an arrest, though, I strongly recommend that it's not only that you consult with a criminal lawyer, of course you need to, but you definitely need to consult with the immigration lawyer. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you definitely need to consult with an immigration lawyer to make sure what are the things, because every time when you fill a form, there are a lot of things, yes, no things, we normally fill it out. You may have to do it differently, though. You may have to look into very closely what you're filling, DS-160, the 485, sometimes on the H4 extensions also. We may have to look into those things, and you have to disclose this information to your immigration lawyer and get the proper guidance from it.